Grizzly Bear Design is run by longtime friend of NineDots, Adam Costello. As well as building the NineDots brand and website for us, Grizzly Bear have worked with many wedding photographers on their brands and websites, including a lot of photographers from within the NineDots community. Adam has been a supporter of NineDots from the very beginning, and to coincide with the launch of an exclusive set of Grizzly Bear discounts for NineDots members, we caught up with Adam to ask him some of the most asked questions we hear about branding and websites for wedding photographers.
So with branding, I think one thing that a lot of people get confused about is that branding is a lot more than a logo. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, totally. So a logo design is not branding. That's like the first number one rule you should probably put in place about when you're talking about branding, especially for startups. Startups will think that branding is your logo. It isn't. Branding is the process that you go through to get to a logo design. Branding's like all the reasons why you choose a certain colour, a certain style, a certain font. It's all got to, your logo's got to be created because of these reasons. And the reason that you have a logo is to attract certain people to your business. So if you get, say if you were to choose the colour red to represent your business, that's going to detract certain people, but it will attract other people. So it's all the reasons, the process and the journey that you go through that is what branding is basically.
So how would that translate? On the one hand, people think of it as just this thing that makes everything look prettier.
Yeah.
But I mean, I found it personally, but like, how would you say that translates into actually giving you a stronger business?
Sure. So you've got to think of it as a completely subconscious thing in terms of when someone lands on your website or they first see your brand for the first time, they won't suddenly just go, oh, that logo looks nice. It'll just be a completely subconscious thing that they will land on your site and they will immediately be attracted to your brand, to your logo, to your colours, to your fonts, which then will lead into them wanting more from you and your website. So that might lead them into looking into your galleries, which then in turn, when they discover that they really like the style of your photography, then it will turn into an inquiry. And that's like the beauty of branding, really. It's a subconscious message that you're sending to your clients, and it can convert into an inquiry, basically.
Yeah. So it's more making the customer feel a certain way about your business.
Yeah, exactly. So like obviously like with branding as well, especially for photographers, it's such a personal service that you're going to be giving to your couple that you want to attract. So that the branding has to ideally reflect your personality, because at the end of the day, that couple are booking you for they want to get to know you. The majority of photographers that I've worked for, it's all about the relationship that they'll have with that couple. They want to form a friendship, an ongoing relationship, even after the wedding. So if you can get that message into your branding in a really clever way, you're going to attract that type of client, and then your business will just naturally grow from there. Basically, I say to people that branding is effectively like your marketing tool. So like think of branding as your number one marketing tool, which you then you get that right, and then everything else is easy after that point, because you've got, it instills the confidence in your business.
Yeah. So once you've got a brand or branding, anything you need to create then after that, whether it's a leaflet or a website or whether it's a piece of like packaging or whatever it might be, it's easy because you know what your brand is and you know what the
absolutely and it goes further than that as well. I think, like, going back to the original question about what the difference between logo design and branding. The branding is meant to get you totally aligned in your head. What is your business actually about? What are your core services? What's your ethos and your values? That's all the branding that you do before you get to a design, before you get to a website, before you start printing your name of your business out. You've got to think, like, what is your business actually really about? Where do you want to be, like, in a year or 2 years' time, and who are the clients that you want to have a photograph during that time? So, and the branding process does that. That's the whole point of the branding process.
And do you find that a lot of the people who come to you for branding know the answers to those questions? So do they know do they know what their ethos is, and do they know what their business is about, or does because I know you call them journeys, don't you? Branded journeys.
Completely.
Does that journey like help people answer those questions as well?
Yeah, massively. So the branding questionnaire, which is basically evolved over years of working with wedding photographers, I've changed it and listened to feedback from people. That I've always got amazing feedback that the photographer will say, "Oh wow, this, like it really made me question so many things about the business." So I find that it totally helps them totally align where they want to be, and then they kind of like the penny will drop, because then they realise that actually I need my business to be set up in this certain way, and I need the brand design files at the end of it to look in a certain way to make sure that it attracts the business. So it's not just about the final brand colours and the logo and everything. It's actually about getting your business ethos correct, and kind of like a bit of a almost like coaching you to get your business in a certain way before you then visually represent it, because you'll be invested in the visual representation, which is then going to last you, like ideally your whole business life, or until you really change the way the business is set up. So it's got to be right, so you need to do it. That's why the investment is so worth it, and you've got to do it right, basically.
I know when I went through it with you, like I didn't know it helped me understand my own business better going through that process before because I came to you thinking I need a new website. And then we did branding first. It helped me understand my own business a lot better. Going through that process and being asked those questions and being made to think about those type of things before we did the website. So then I understood. My business was already at that point for 6-7 years old, but and so I kind of understood it, but I'd never really sat down and. So do you find most people is exactly the same?
Completely. It kind of makes you probably stop and because everyone's the same when you're running your own freelance business. You're on your own, you're working, you've got to get the jobs in to get the money. But you never really stop and look at your business properly. And what the branding journey can do is make you literally sit down, look at the business, whether it's the very beginnings or you're a year on or a few years on. You look down and just look at it and think, like, where do I want to be in 2-3 years time? You want to grow the business, so you need to do it right, and you've got to get those foundations right. So
And what would like. So some people would think, well, it's this much money to go on a branding journey. Grizzly Bear. And it's 35 quid to put a thing into Fiverr or 99 Designs and get so what's obviously the big difference is one of them gives you a logo and one of them gives you this brand identity, but why would you say like a mistake? It would be a mistake to put your money, however small it might be, into something like 99 Designs.
Well, I wouldn't actually say that it's a mistake to use something like Fiverr or Etsy. Etsy's a really good one, but you've got to remember that you're just getting a logo that's going to probably serve a purpose. Not many startups have thousands of pounds to invest in branding at that point, and I also think that it's not possibly worth doing branding at the very beginning anyway. Because you don't actually know what your business is about, or your client, or your style of photography. I often think it's better to maybe be at least a year or 2 years into your photography business, so that you actually know the style of photography that you're doing, because the branding should reflect that as well. So I think like getting a cheap logo off Etsy, it works for some people and totally serves a purpose, but you've got to remember that it's just a logo. It's not really been thought. There's no thinking behind it, which is where the beauty in employing someone like a branding agency to look at your brand. It really works. It's so worth it, because you end up with something that's 100% meaningful, and and it instills, like I said before, totally instills the confidence in your business. It's hard to kind of. Unless you've done it, I think it's like really hard to sort of see it, if you know what I mean. It's like,
So you call them branding journeys. So what is the journey? Like if somebody decides they want a brand, and they come to you, like how does it start?
Okay. So the way that I work is initially through I'd first have a 20-minute chat to a half an hour chat with you over video, or ideally in person, and that's where we get to know each other and work out whether we are a good fit to start with, because I think really in exactly the same way that when you book a wedding client, you have to be the right fit. You should be able to say no to your wedding clients in the same way that I should be able to say no to a client that we've got to work well together. It's going to be a working relationship of maybe 2 to 3 months, and I also want an ongoing relationship. So we've got to gel well. So we have that initial chat, and if we want to work together, we do. And then that's when I set you up a client portal, which is an online account for you, which you log into the back end of the Grizzly Bear website, and it asks, and you'll get access to your branding questionnaire, which is an online questionnaire. And asks you like really deep and meaningful questions about your business, about your history, and like your ethos and your values and your target client. And by the end of that questionnaire, you submit it, and then we book in for the first branding session, which is usually about an hour to an hour and a half session, where we go over, basically I use the questionnaire as like talking points. We go over all the questions and like, why did you answer that question in that certain way? And I try and guide you through like all the whys and reasons to, like why have you answered those questions in that way? And at the end of that questionnaire, at the end of that branding session, we then have decided like a concept and a direction for the design that is going to go in. We'll have like a really solid idea of what your ethos is going to be and how that needs to be translated into design. So we'll be able to look at the colours and justify the colours that we're going to use for your business, and the fonts. So we're going to use a sans serif or a serif font, and the reasons why. So at the end of that session, I basically talk you through and make you comfortable with the design direction that I'm going to go in. And at the end of that session, once it's finished, I then write your design brief, and I come up with the mood boards, and I'll come up with some loose, sketchy concepts. We then have another session, a video session or in person, usually about maybe 45 minutes to an hour long, and I talk you through the mood boards, the brief, and we get really like we're totally aligned with where it's going to go, so that there's no sort of discrepancies or you're fully comfortable with where I'm going to take the designs. And then that's when I go deep into designing, and I'll disappear for a couple of weeks maybe, and have my design head, and get once I'm happy with what I've designed, I usually will do like logo variations, and the colours and the fonts all working together as one big profile, rather than just sending you one logo, because it should be at the point where we've agreed the colours and everything. And then once I'm happy with the profile, I send that profile to you, and we have another branding session. And usually by that point, it's a case of just fine tweaking until you're totally happy, and I finish it off and send you all your final brand files.
Sounds like there's a lot of therapy that goes into it before you actually get to designing it, which is probably the big difference between like going and just buying a logo than...
Oh, completely, exactly. That's exactly what it is, like brand therapy. It's like looking at, keep saying the reasons why we're going to get to a point, the designs that we're going to use. It's pure therapy.
Nice. And then I guess it's interesting that you say about having that initial meeting to see whether it's a good fit, because I guess I never really thought of that but it makes total sense that people have. You're a designer and a branding expert, but you've got to have your own style as well. So people need to be comfortable that you're only going to be able to create things that are within your own style and taste, I guess. Yeah, even though you're going to be able to mould a little bit to each client, I suppose it's still going to be a way that you work and something that you prefer. So
completely. Yeah, absolutely. It's what I think the hardest thing about branding and about designing is trying to translate what is in the photographer's head onto a piece of paper, and that's why you need to go through the branding process. That's because someone can say something what they want it to look like. They can even show you something on Pinterest of what they want it to look like. But again, it's like, why do you want it to look that way? But then when they actually see it designed in that way, then it just might be completely wrong and not what they expected. So the whole brand therapy is to make sure that we get it right, basically.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So how long would the process be from somebody coming to you initially for an inquiry and to actually getting their finished brand?
I say it's about up to a month and then about a week to 2 weeks of fine tweaking and getting it totally right and getting the brand pack finished. So yeah, you're talking a maximum a month and a half. Wouldn't want it to take any longer than that, really.
Yeah.
So.
And what would so you just said brand pack? What would a brand pack include? So
you get your primary logo, you get a secondary logo, which is the logo version, which may look differently on your website or in print, because obviously a screen is like a rectangle, or you might have a thin flyer, so you might want a different variation of your logo. You get potentially like icons. You could have a sticker or a a badge. Often photographers want to use a badge on like USBs or anything like that. So designs like that. If we've worked to have a strap line for the business, you'll have a logo which uses the strap line, and you'll have a logo that doesn't use the strap line. I work with patterns and borders, because your website, or for print as well, you're going to want to use patterns and borders for backgrounds and just little funky design elements that you may want to include for your website. Obviously the fonts, you'd need your fonts as well. I think that's a really important factor as well of branding, is like getting the fonts right, and then using that same font for everything. It's often a big mistake that people will go through a branding process and then they'll not have the font and just use some other random font. And for me, it's like the worst thing you can ever see, because that's the whole point. Everything's got to look super consistent, and just stick to your brand, like because you just sort of ruin it. And it's crazy, like talking about the subconscious level before, that will have, as soon as you create a bit of confusion for your client, if they land on your website and you've got different fonts that aren't working, it can totally detract your client, and you'd be surprised how many clients might be put off by that factor and go and choose someone else.
So a month later, you've got your branding, you've got your brand pack, all these bits and pieces. What would be the next? Obviously, one like logical next step would be then to have a custom website built using all that stuff. But not everybody is going to go that route. So what are the options at that point, do you reckon, for actually using that brand pack?
Yeah, absolutely. So you got obviously at the end of it, you've got all those design elements that I've just talked about. So it's up to you. You could go down the WordPress theme route and use all those design elements if you want. If you're comfortable designing your own site using a theme, you could go to another web design agency and just chuck them the files and they design the site for you. Or you can obviously use use Grizzly Bear for a bespoke WordPress site, which is where I'll do the best work, I feel, is when I'm branding someone and I've also got in mind that they're going to be doing a bespoke WordPress website, because I can help you. Even during the branding process, we can talk about the website and the reasons why you might want to have the website set up in a certain way. And when I'm designing, I'll be thinking that'll work really nice in the website. So the next step is like using those brand elements in your website. Okay, so let's talk about Steve Walker, who we branded probably about 3 years ago. So I took him through a full branding journey as well as into a bespoke WordPress website. So Steve first, it's quite a funny story in a way, because Steve first got in contact by email, I think, and we arranged the usual video chat, and he appeared on the screen in his full army clothes, I think his RAF maybe, and I was like, oh, it was like, shit, I thought it was like some sort of investigation. But anyway, it turned out to be Steve Walker, finishing off his RAF service. So he was just starting out at that point, and he knew, he's really super focused, and I think he just knew that he needed to go through some sort of branding process to get his business as professional as possible, and he knew the value of having a bespoke WordPress website and the investment involved. So he actually came to the studios and we talked him through the whole process and agreed to work with him. Went through the full branding questionnaire process, and he got it all back to us and went through all the process that I've just talked about, having the brand sessions with myself, to which we then came up with a modern logo using different shapes, obviously using his name, Stephen Walker, and photography. You use like quite sort of subtle colours and quite modern, and to be honest, I think like it's really good to see someone that we branded who was a startup in a way, it's like you're in an unknown area because you don't really know. They don't necessarily know where the business is going to go, maybe. And also, like, is it going to really reflect the business, like the style of photography and things? Is it going to work in a year, 2 years time? So here we are now, like maybe probably 3 years down the line since when he started, looking at his website and his photography, and it all still works really well. So he obviously invested in the branding and then the bespoke WordPress website, and he's just been able to build on that site because it's a bespoke site. He's been able to just modify it himself, add pages. He uses like gravity forms for his bookings, and he can modify, customize it. It's just an amazing foundation, such a no-brainer investment in your business to have a bespoke site, because it's going to last you years and years and years, and it's the foundation to your inquiries. And obviously with the branding, it just works. So Lottie Elizabeth came to us, like, she wanted a lot of her personality obviously reflected in the branding, and we went for like a really personal brand. It's really organic, and used like exotic elements, which you can see on the website. So we've used like a nice sort of tropical leaves, and we actually hand drew and hand crayoned, crayoned is that the word? Used crayons and colours and watercolours to design her patterns and borders and colours, and her actual colour palette is like super tropical, super summery, and I think it gels really nicely with her photography. Her photography is like really bright, it's really vibrant, it's really modern, it's like really clean, and obviously we go through, like, during the branding process as well, we'll look at like the keywords of your business. So for her on a website, she's got natural, fun and relaxed wedding photography, and straight away when you're looking at her brand, that's what it is to me. It's relaxed, like there's all these nice little design elements which have been hand drawn, and so it completely reflects like who she's trying to target as well. Like so the type of couples that she wants to target are relaxed, down to earth people, are probably into travel. She does a lot of destination weddings, so they may be big into travel and want to get married abroad. So it's just like, obviously we did a bespoke WordPress website for her as well, so you can see, I mean, you log onto a website and I think it's a big site. It feels really big. It's really clear. There's loads on the homepage. With all this content on the homepage as well, it's really good for SEO. All the design elements work really nicely together. And just there's obviously like little different elements as well. Like we used her initials, Ellie, for a secondary logo, which can be used in the footer, and different icons for her social media, and all this like just makes her look brilliant. It'll attract I can't see a reason why someone wouldn't book her when they land on a website, but it will also detract certain clients that she doesn't want to get inquiries from. It's even like the flow of the website, so all the different elements that she's got on the homepage, how do these link into getting an inquiry, which is where a bespoke site, the sort of underneath thinking of a bespoke site is ultimately you want an inquiry. So how are not point of sale, call to action. It has to be visible or put in the right place, so it's all got to be thought about so that it converts into this inquiry, and the right inquiry as well. So if we go to a get in touch page, she's got a totally bespoke contact way of getting in contact. So she's got the choice of weddings and family, which then opens up a completely bespoke form for her, which, worth saying, talking about all the different devices that it works on as well. It seamlessly will be working on your mobile, it's the main way that people make inquiries now, is through mobile phones.
So you mentioned earlier about one mistake you often see people make is around the fonts they're using and how they're using them. Mm-hmm. So what is the biggest mistake people use around fonts?
The biggest mistake. So obviously, when you go through a branding process, we'll come up with a font that works for your logo, and we'll come up with another complementary font that's often used for like the photography bit of your logo, and then we'll come up with a font which is used for the body of your brand, the body, like all the correspondence, if you like, on the website, the body section of the website. So these 3 fonts are all designed. There's loads of sort of psychology behind like fonts that will work together, and some are really obvious and some aren't. Like the way that they work, they can clash, or they can just gel really, really well. It's called font pairing, so it's actually quite a skill to find the right fonts. So once you've found those right fonts for the brand that reflect the brand, then that's what should be used. And often you'll see clients maybe often like a year or so down the track of having gone through the branding process, they may have either forgotten or just got lazy with remembering that they should use a font, and then they've just gone and used a similar font that just doesn't work, and just plonked it on the website in whatever way, which it can have a negative impact. So someone will land on the website and something's not quite right, although it just, for you, the owner of the business thinks, it's nothing, but you'd be super surprised how they may find another site that looks totally seamless, and then therefore they may go with that other photographer because it's so competitive, as everyone knows. So it's just about getting it right and keeping it right as well. And if you've gone through that whole process in investment, don't spoil it a year down the track.
So that's really interesting about fonts, but are there other mistakes people make? What about things like colours?
Yeah, so colours is another world altogether, I reckon. Like a colour can mean so much to someone personally. Like if you're a business owner, you might just love the colour dark blue or something, but does that colour actually, is it going to attract like your dream client? Although you love that colour, does it even reflect your personality? It might not. You might just like it because you like it on a car, the colour of a car or whatever, but actually does it really work for your brand? A common big one as well, I think, to talk about colour psychology on the most basic form. Like colour psychology is what it is. It's like a psychological reason to like a colour and therefore like a brand. So if we take the colour red, for example, red immediately on a subconscious level means danger. So you might want to avoid using red in your logo because it could actually, to the client, it might just immediately put them off, even though they might like your photos or like the font or whatever of your brand. But using the colour red, it's like I'd try and avoid using the colour red. Similarly, like using the colour pink, who's to be stereotypical, who's that actually going to attract? It might be used for more of a girly brand or a softer brand, and same with the blue. Like it's going to maybe attract like more masculine, and it's just about investigating really what colours work best for your brand. So the mistakes that people use is just probably not thinking about the colours or thinking about the colours but not thinking about what colours I like as a person, rather than like what actually might attract your actual dream clients.
What about using too many colours or colours that don't necessarily work with each other or that kind of thing? Do you see that
definitely often? Yeah, well, you'll get some clients who want to use quite a lot of colours, and that's like fine if they all work together. So maybe a maximum amount of colours that you probably want in a palette is maybe 5 or 6. I always think like the less the better, so really ideally if you can just have 2 or 3, that's going to be better, but I understand like loads of people do want to use more colours, and it can be really nice to use different colours, especially if you've got like different services, whether it's like you're a wedding photographer, a family photographer, or a commercial photographer. You might have different colours to represent those different services. So I think if you're going to brand yourself, let's say, I'd just try and keep it as simple as possible. Just use 2 or 3 colours.
Yeah. What about things like the text on a website? what kind of mistakes do you see people making around that side of things?
Yeah, massive. I think the branding side of it, you've got to remember it's not only just about your visual aspect. The visual aspect is about how you're going to talk to your clients within your copy. So a big mistake is like you could have really nice branding done, colours, fonts, and your logo, but the way that you actually talk on your website, the language that you use doesn't match up, and because the branding might not have been done properly, or you've not properly thought about it. So a big mistake is like just the way that you're actually speaking on your website. You might be really good at like writing your own copy, but often often it's really beneficial to use a copywriter, and then the copywriter will use the branding and have brand guidelines in the way that they want to speak. So that's another big mistake that people can make, is just by not writing in the right way on your website, which again, all these little different elements add up, don't they, into what essentially you want to turn into a booking.
Yeah.